Welcome back to Millennial Z and Boomer X. I'm Boomer X,
Millennial Z.
and today we're talking about superhero movies. And are you sick of them yet? They have been huge in the last 10 years. They really started taking off, I think, about 20 years ago with the
Yeah.
first Spider-Man with Toby McGuire in 2002.
hmm
And it did so well that you knew there was going to be a sequel, which is fine. I was anxious to see it.
hmm
I know I took you to the movies to see it, you and your brother,
Yeah.
and we were wowed by it, even though it departed a little bit from the comics, but not much. I mean, it was true to the Marvel character, pretty much.
Yeah. As soon as they implemented the him having natural web slinging
That was the
abilities.
only real difference at the
Yeah.
time.
And at the time I was like, oh, that's not what I wanted, but whatever.
Right, right.
It,
There's going to be differences, creative
Mhm.
differences or whatever, and I was fine with that. Although it was a part of his character about him being smart enough that he could create that as a teenager. He was supposed to be
Right.
a
It
genius,
was
so
it was kind of a big deal. It's like, oh, he's supposed to be a genius just to make some of this stuff his own,
right.
He's supposed to really be able to make his own gadgets. He's supposed to be on the par of, Fantastic Four, and Tony Stark
Well,
type of.
that was the next, I think, big movie was Fantastic Four for Marvel that came out, and we're geeking out here talking about that. But that's one of the things that if you're not into those movies, you're probably fully worn out on them. You're just sick of it and thinking, okay, when do we get back to regular storytelling with real people? And the thing is, it's all fiction, unless it's a documentary, and even then, it has that person's editing and personal spin on it to show
hmm
what he wants to show or leave out what he thinks is innocuous, but it may not be. And this has taken the public by storm, captured their imagination, and offered entertainment. I mean, that's the bottom line for movies, as far as I'm concerned. The critics
hmm
can say what they will, and people can complain or champion their particular view or movies, and that's all good and well. But bottom line is, did you have a good time when you sat there and watched that?
Right.
That's really what it's all about.
hmm
And like I said before, and I'm pulling up some stats just so we can let people know why everything's coming up, why they're having superhero movies constantly. And as we said in the first Spider-Man, it came out in 2002 with Toby McGuire, and it has grossed over $825 million at the box office so far.
Wow.
That, yeah,
I was expecting less. I mean, I know it's
yes,
big, but that's still almost a billion.
yeah, that's just box office. That doesn't include downloads, watching at home,
hmm
TV, merchandising, which I'm
hmm
sure is considerably more than that.
Yeah.
Uh, DVD and download rentals, that's just box office receipts, $825 million.
But really that too, and it's the Godfather sequel to all the other ones, the Spectacular Spider-Man, the Amazing Spider-Man with, Andrew
Yeah,
Garfield and Tom
that
Holland.
was that was done without Stan Lee's approval. He got no money from it until he sued them civilly because it was his creation
hmm
with Marvel as he was the editor at the time. And he won millions and millions of dollars for that because they failed to acknowledge him at all, even though the company received some of the money. But
Hmm.
it was they had a different contractual arrangement. They gave no credit to Stan Lee at all, as far as I know, no credit monetarily for that
And this is
character.
Sony owning it the entire time during
Not
that
that
as well.
it has changed hands because it's been 20 years. It has changed hands. About Sony has it, then now Disney has it. Disney has Marvel. Before that, I think
I know
Sony had.
they're technically renting the contract, right?
Yeah,
Like,
there's a whole bunch of legal things that they have to
mhm.
sort out. That's the reason why you haven't seen any Hulk standalone movies lately and things like that.
Which is a shame because the Incredible Hulk movie, the 2008 one, somewhere around there, that was an amazing movie. I
You
really
thought
wish
so.
they'd
A
have.
lot of people were hating on it.
I thought that was so good. That was
I
such a
thought
good
they did a
iteration.
I thought they did a good job with it. But again, we're geeking out on it. And if people are
hmm
sick of these movies, they're hating. Like, what are you talking? Well, the thing is, that movie, and it was the one of the tamest of all. It was the first one. The CGI wasn't as good as it is now. The
hmm
direction, they don't have the continuity, and the movies are all woven together now in the Marvel universe. They're there's a phase. I think we're in phase 4, beginning of phase 4 now. There's supposed to be a phase 5 with the Marvel continuity, all the movies and series working together. But the first modern Marvel movie, I think, was still Spider-Man with Toby McGuire. But the first modern DC movie was 1989 with Michael Keaton as Batman. And that movie has made $411.6 million at the box office. And that was in
I thought
1980.
there was an even older one. I'm sure
Well, they
there
had
are
older
older
ones,
ones.
the 1960s, but I'm not including that as modern movie. That's not the
Gotcha.
modern take on it.
Hmm.
That's more of a archaic kind of,
I got you.
tongue-in-cheek
Hmm.
parody of things, and that's the way
Yeah.
comics were seen
Pam,
back then.
wow, a lot of automatopoeias and
Exactly. That was 1966. That was actually the year I was born. That movie came out, and it looks like it. I mean, so and they were having a good time, and that's that's to be expected because it was a kid thing. And that's the thing, it's
Mhm.
not a kid thing anymore. It's an adult thing, and it's captured many people's imaginations. And as long as they're making money like this, you're going to keep seeing movies like this until not just a few individuals are sick of them, but everybody's sick of them. You're going to, when they start spending over $100 million for the movie and the movie bombs, then you'll stop seeing these kind of movies. And it's going to have to be more than once because
Yeah.
they've,
It's a tried and true method now. It's been done and done and
yes, yes.
been shown to work every time.
And even if you replace the actors, like Spider-Man's already had 3 main actors,
Hmm.
and he's still the latest Spider-Man has been No Way Home with Tom Holland. It's only been out a couple of weeks, and it's already made $1.8 billion so far at the
Insane.
box office.
It's still, to
Um,
me, that's not as impressive as 2007 Toby Maguire to me because I know it's less than half the money, but you didn't have that
that was
fan
Spider-Man
service.
2, right?
You didn't have that fan service. You didn't have the amount of
Right.
people that
You
were
didn't have
already
everybody
involved.
pulled in.
Right.
He was doing it. He was pretty much on his own. That was the first one, and he had to
Hmm.
capture people's imaginations. Well, I think it was only possible because I noticed the storylines because I was a comic book geek when I was a young teenager, and I would, get them and collect them. We didn't have a lot of money, so I would have to do little odd jobs and stuff, and I'd spend what little I had on one I could afford it, or my friends and I would trade them, and we'd read each other's comic books. And it didn't start getting good. The old comics were like the old Batman movie in the 60s. They were just trite. It was about action and goofiness and insane characters doing crazy things that weren't possible if you're a human. And it was just an escape in the most obvious way. Where sometime in the 80s, they started using people who wrote novels and short stories to write comic book stories, and it changed dramatically. There was character development, there was
Is that
consistent
when
plot lines.
Dark Horse was introduced and such, or was that
I
later
think
on?
I think that came in, yeah, sometime in the 80s. But that happened. Of course, you had the independent comics like Dark Horse and other
Hmm.
people, but it crept into Marvel and DC too. I think DC was like the last holdout of goofy comic characters. The old Superman in the
Yeah,
70s, the
they really wanted
cartoons.
to keep the tradition of keeping it that certain image for a long
Yeah,
time.
but they caved in because people just stopped reading their comics
Yeah.
and they had to do something to keep up, especially with the explosion of the X-Men, which you saw come about. And the X-Men was the first one to really start developing characters and continual plot lines. So each comic book was like another chapter in a novel that was being created by these writers and
Hmm.
inkers and pencilers, and it was an entire theme until it was done, and then you'd have a new group of writers and artists come out to create a new theme, and you see
Right.
that in the last couple of decades. But it's, again, if they continue to make money like they're doing, it's going to continue to go. I have the top 4 ranked movies of all time. The number 1 is Avatar,
I already
and
knew that one.
that's a fantasy movie, which is almost comic book like in its presentation. It's a science fiction story, which I read a lot of as a
Hmm.
kid and a teenager, and even a young adult. But it has a comic book like feel to it with the CGI and the romantic story and a hero and all this
Yeah,
kind of thing.
that's what I would push it towards is they definitely have a center point hero that's saving the world
Right. And the
in that.
latest the latest figures is a lifetime gross of $2.847 billion at the box office with Avatar.
Yeah,
That's no
unfathomable
merchandising.
numbers.
Yeah, that's no merchandising, no video downloads, no DVDs, and I don't think people use DVDs much anymore. But even then, that's just raw ticket sales at the box office, $2.847 billion. The next one, number two, is Avengers End Game, the culmination of I think phase two of the Marvel, or phase three. I can't remember. I don't know where we are. I think it's the end of phase two, because phase three was series release with Disney Plus, and now we're starting phase four. But
I
the
have no idea.
lifetime gross of that movie at number two was $2.798 billion. So just behind Avatar in number two
Real
spot.
close.
Box
Yeah.
office only. And I think the merchandising sales is even bigger with
Way
that
bigger than
than with
Avatar.
Avatar. Yeah, so they made a lot more money off of it in total. And third, take a guess.
Another superhero movie or Titanic?
Yeah, you tell me which.
I would think Titanic, maybe.
Yes, yeah, Titanic is number three, but it's a distant three. It's 2.2 billion. It's a $500 million, more than $500 million, almost $0.6 billion behind Avengers Endgame. And I don't think there was a whole lot of merchandising opportunity off of Titanic.
No.
Not too many people want to buy sunken ships, or
A floating door, maybe.
yeah, floating door, or dolls of Leonardo DiCaprio and
Yeah.
Kate Winslet. It's just
In a car, maybe.
in a necklace that was thrown overboard. That's pretty much the opportunities you have for Titanic at the time. So you're not going to
Foggy
have
window T model, maybe.
right. You're not going to have a whole lot of money making opportunities except movie sales, and
Yeah.
that's it. And again, it was a distant third. And fourth, any idea? Just take a stab.
Is it superhero relative?
I'm not
Or-
giving hints. Just take
Oh,
first thing
man.
pops in your head.
I couldn't tell you. Couldn't tell
Okay.
you.
So no guess.
No guess.
Okay. Star Wars Episode 8, The Force Awakens.
Would never have guessed Star Wars.
Yeah, it's been around a while, since 1975, 76. So
I would have never
you can
guessed.
imagine Star Wars, but it's Episode 8. That's the thing. And it's a distant fourth, $2.0695 billion. So just over $2 billion. So it's
Which one is The Force Awakens? Is this with
Force
the new
Awakens.
characters? This
Correct.
isn't with
that's the one with Rey.
This is the latest. Okay.
Yeah, The Force Awakens.
I didn't watch those. I watched the first one, and after that I was like, meh.
Oh, I say no, it says The Force Awakens, and it's shown as 7. My bad, not
So it's the 7th one?
yes. So it's the beginning of Anakin.
So it was the first one. Oh, it was Anakin.
I think so. I'm not much of a Star Wars guy, so let me look it up. I don't want to give misinformation. And we'll
Check
see.
it real quick.
But I know it's number 7. And how
Force
much it may.
Awakens.
I'm doing it right now.
No, okay, that was with Rey and Kylo Ren and old Harrison Ford, Han
Really?
Solo. Mhm.
So that's episode. Yeah, they changed prequels, and so that changed up the numbering. So that messed me up. And that's what I thought. That was Rey. That's the most modern one, and it's of course living off of its legacy and continuation.
That was the first one, though. And
First
I
one of
can
that.
understand. Yeah, and I can understand it because even I watched it and I wasn't really interested in it, but I was like, let's go watch it in the movies.
It's
Hopefully
curious.
good.
It's gonna. And what'd you think?
Not nearly as what I mean. I've never been a big Star Wars movie fan. I've always been
Right.
a big Star Wars universe fan, but I don't like
The
the
idea
way
is
they
good, but
portray
they
it in the
always
movies. Yeah.
seem to disappoint, and that's
Mhm.
what happened with that movie, and why you don't see anything coming up about that movie since, except potential merchandising. They're scrambling to rewrite that, and you see what's coming out now with Disney Plus stuff, The Mandalorian, Boba Fett, Rogue
Mhm.
One. All that stuff is about the time period between when Luke started coming up and when Rey started The Force Awakens. So the time between that, the New Republic essentially is what all the movies are being made about, because they look at that as much more potentially lucrative, because I think they know that there's nothing wrong with a female protagonist as a hero. It's just the way they did it was simply insulting to a lot of people.
Yeah, that she was very shallow. There was a lot of problems with that movie. She wasn't even close to the main problems of
Yeah,
that
she
movie
was a
personally.
Mary Sue, really. She
Mhm,
could do no wrong, and you knew she
mhm.
was going to be, and she's the strongest ever. She was
She
part
was
of a
the
giant.
Superman of the Star Wars. You're like, I already know how
Yeah,
this plays out, you know.
yeah, and that gets boring in a hurry, and you want to
Mhm.
see some conflict, some genuine conflict where you're worried whether or not, even though you know, since it's their movie, they're going to pull it out, but you want to feel like they might lose.
They had a
And that,
good couple branch offs. The Rogue series was I watched those. Those were
right,
good. The
right.
heist one.
Well, that's the period where I'm talking about. That's prior
Hmm.
to that Force Awakens movie. And it's during a time when everything was kind of wild and woolly and you were reestablishing characters and you knew what they did. And it was references to things that were done in previous movies that were released. So you had that continuing legacy where the one with Ray was rewriting the whole thing. But we're saying that I think you're going to see new Star Wars movies come out, and
Hmm.
it's going to be in that period. It's not going to be anything to do with the Force Awakens and on for quite some time.
I think they're having that same issue with the play out scenes in these superhero movies. Is they're starting to see a formula, and people are starting to possibly
Right.
just get tired of it.
Well, I have to say, I it seems formulaic. All movies are really formulaic in the way
Yeah.
they do it, but it's becoming obvious. I think what's obvious is with superhero stuff that it's becoming old and like, okay, what can they do next? Yawn. This is really not
Hmm.
catching my attention. And even then, um, like I said, Batman with Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson made $412 million almost.
What about the one with George Clooney?
I didn't even look that up. I don't think it was much of a flash in the pan as that
Mhm.
one was. However,
Was that
it
with
was.
Mr. Freeze? Was that one, or is that a different one? I can't remember. It's
I
been so
I
long
don't
since I watched
remember
it.
either. I wasn't
Yeah.
much of a Batman fan. I just enjoyed it, and the reason why my generation saw comic books evolve into something that required some imagination and thought and continued character development. It
Hmm.
became a literary device, and graphic novels came out and required more thought and deliberation in their creation and captured more people. And then, of course, Gen X kids and early or very late boomers. I think anybody older than that have no use for that. But I know a guy who was definitely a boomer, was in Vietnam as a tunnel rat, and he was just wowed by the first Avengers movie. He just couldn't believe how good it looked, how creative the characters were, how cool it was, how they set the pace, how they developed it, everything, how the plot was. He truly enjoyed the first Avengers movie and said it was the best movie he'd ever seen when it came out. And you'd never expect it from this guy. He was a very
Wow.
practical, down to earth guy. And I thought that was pretty exceptional, but he wasn't the only one. After that movie came out, it really blew up. The numbers blew up after that. And a lot of people poo poo the Ultron movie, but it kept it going. You may not have particularly liked that character and how they did it, but it kept the idea moving and it made a ton of money too, which set up for the following Infinity War saga and Civil War saga and all that. So you have many things going on, and as long as they can pull those huge numbers, you're going to continue to see more superhero movies.
I'm not sure because I didn't see the birth or genesis of the Avengers, obviously, because I wasn't around when that happened. But I do know in the movie sake saga
You mean in
that
the
it's
comics?
in the comics, right? I don't
Yeah,
know
it
how
was
it
it was
started
pretty
off.
bad. It was nothing like the movies. It didn't start off anything like the movies. That
So,
they had their own way of doing it in the movies, and that's cool. There's
yeah,
nothing wrong
so,
with
so I remember them doing Iron Man first was the first
it. Hmm.
iteration towards this whole series they were planning
Hmm.
to do.
Yeah, how they handled it in the movies was fine. I didn't find it
And,
offensive. I
and I
enjoyed
thought,
it.
yeah, I found Iron Man probably the best iteration. Like Robert Downey Jr. did a great job. The
Hmm.
way they had his whole story was really close to what I remember from the little snippets of reading some comic books on Iron Man's origin
They
story. It
did
was pretty accurate.
they did stay pretty close to the comic origins on
Mhm.
Iron Man. They got away from how the Mandarin character is,
Yeah, a
and
lot.
it angered a lot of people. So it doesn't matter to you if you're not a comics geek, but if you are, that was offensive. But they're trying to bring it back with the latest movie with Shang-Chi and the
Hmm.
others. So, they're trying to weave that all together, and they're finally having my favorite comic book character come out as a series on Disney Plus as Moon Knight. And if they do it right, it could be tremendous. If they do it wrong, it's going to be laughably bad, but
Hmm.
still interesting to me just because the character is so complex. And you take Batman and how do you twist it and make him crazier and more interesting at the same time? That's who Moon Knight is. So
Right.
and like I said, Batman was always okay. He was a character, and I was a young teen, so you follow it. But he never did much for me. But Moon Knight was a totally different thing. I really liked that character.
Yeah, Moon Knight was kind of like a Batman Spawn to me. Not necessarily with the powers of Spawn, but the inner demons and the inner
Yeah, Moon
turmoil
Knight's
problems.
that's the thing. Moon Knight's crazy.
Hmm.
He was initially introduced as someone who was hunting werewolves in the old mystical kind of thing, but like Batman, he's super rich, had gadgets, all this. But his backstory was more mystical and arcane. Batman forces his through fear. Moon Knight uses fear as well, but also has some magical assistance.
Hmm.
So where Batman does not, although in the DC world you see Batman goes back and forth with magical characters and the other original Justice League characters don't.
Hmm.
So he's kind of a crossover, but Moon Knight's solidly over there. And he's superhumanly strong when the moon is high and tough and he regenerates and all this stuff that Batman doesn't have. He just has more gadgets.
And I suppose the next phase four, as you were saying, is them making series instead of
Well, they already
movies.
did that in middle of phase three, if I'm thinking of it
Because they did
correctly.
Loki and
Correct. They did
Vision and
Loki
stuff.
and Vision, right? Wanda and Vision,
Mhm.
and the new Captain America with Falcon and Winter
Oh yeah,
Soldier.
right.
Yeah,
I heard that was actually pretty good.
yeah, I saw that, and it was pretty good. I
Hmm.
was I was pleased. They did a nice job with it because it could have gone sideways in a hurry,
Hmm.
but they did a really nice job. In fact, I like how they handled Winter Soldier better in the movies than in the comics. And I wasn't a big Winter Soldier fan at all. It was just crossover stuff. So that was interesting. They kept true to the Captain America stuff. And if you're not a comics nerd, I apologize for all this comic talk, but I'm just thinking back and putting it together in my mind between the comics and the movies. And I thought they did a pretty good job, especially they're doing this for modern audiences who have no interest in reading comics and haven't seen them in the past. And really for the younger ones, like Millennial Z here and younger, and they need to make it topical, current,
Hmm.
and entertaining for those people while still staying true to the characters. And I thought they did a good job. And as long as they keep doing that, and especially as long as they keep making money, you're going to keep seeing movies. It's going to be interesting to see how they handle the newer characters because you're going to have to introduce new characters to keep people wanting to see the next movie. Because after a while, you're going to be like, who cares? Like even Superman, they have to recreate that character every time for the movies to make it interesting. And you'll see it wait years before another one comes out. And I think the latest version of Superman is really good with
Hmm.
Henry
Yeah,
Cavill. He's a really, really good choice. You look at him and go, yeah, it's Superman. I mean,
yeah.
and
He
the way
definitely
he
fits the
acts the
picture.
character. Hmm.
I think these I think these people getting tired of and the expression of people getting tired of these movies is already happening with iterations like The Boys from Amazon and spin-off
Yeah, you see them
parodies.
have the
Right,
corruption. They're doing it as I don't know if it's a parody other than it's a twist
right.
because
It's a yeah. I say parody not as in a joking manner, but a parody as in you're obviously
these guys
taking
aren't truth
taking this
justice.
image, right? You're taking this image of a
Right,
superhero and you're bringing in realism and how these
right.
people would actually act with this amount of power
And they're
and being able
villainous
to.
instead of heroic.
Mhm.
Right. And of
But they're
course they're
perceived as
owned.
so.
Right, and of course they're owned by a corporation, and it's
Of course.
implied that that's what makes them villainous. And I don't think
Mhm.
that's necessarily so because they could certainly be working for the government and be just as villainous. So
Mhm.
that whole thing is, but it's implied in the way they write it that it's the corporation that causes them to be. They raise them that way, and they're creating that for lack of a better term, superhero serum to put
Hmm.
in them as
There's definitely
babies.
some narratives going on there, but
Right, right.
I
There's
think that expression of people seeing and getting tired of the same formula of how superheroes are supposed to be done
yeah.
is
Well,
being
I
expressed through the boys and such.
and that's fine, and I enjoy that series too, and it's different than um, certainly the main stream superhero stuff between Marvel and DC. That was more of a twist from an independent comic book
Hmm.
venture, and it's a welcome one because you see they're just people that happen to have superpowers. Like what would
Hmm.
happen, and that's interesting to me because they act more like human beings and less like myths like heroes and
Right.
mythical beings that have integrity. There are people who have a great deal of integrity, but curiously, these people aren't the ones that want to run for political office. They aren't the ones that, in real life, they aren't the ones that are typical heroes, except by accident. These guys know how most people are, how politics works, and all these things, and they simply don't want to be bothered. They don't want to break their integrity and their promises to themselves, and they're going to be good people no matter what. And those kind of people just see how other people act and just don't want to associate with them.
Hmm. I
So
suppose another one I was trying to think of another option was Jupiter's Legacy, even though it flopped, was another kind
yeah,
of
that was
twist.
yeah, that was okay. I believe that was a Netflix
Hmm.
production, and it was kind of slow in the beginning, and the way they did the timelines was a bit confusing. And I'm sure that was on purpose to make it different, so
Hmm.
that we would have something like, okay, this is different. I'll continue to watch it because I was getting superhero burnout by that point too.
Yeah.
But I remember hearing about it, never saw it, and I watched it, and it was one season and it bombed so badly, and that was probably due to superhero burnout because the production value was pretty good. The
I think
story,
where they're lacking was choreography. I remember those fight scenes just being really bad compared
yeah,
to
it
what people are
it
used to
was,
now.
but it was superhero like, so I don't
Hmm.
fault them on it too much for that. When you have
Maybe that was they were trying to
superheroes,
go for a hokey looking because superhero.
yeah, I don't think it was too hokey, but I think they were just trying to capture the super more than in the modern stuff. And I think the way it was presented and the fact that there was a little bit of superhero burnout is what made it bomb. And it may be that the way it was presented was the cause of it more than anything. Because when I was legitimately like, I was to the point where I don't really care and I like
Hmm.
these things. So if I was thinking that way, think about the people who are lukewarm. They bailed probably after
Right.
2 episodes. Like, this doesn't even make sense, or I don't care what happens next, even if it was well produced and well acted.
You know what's interesting enough is I'm usually the fight porn guy. I'll just watch a series just to watch the fight scenes is really what I'll go for, right?
Well, yeah. So if
Especially
you're
with
gonna be,
anime and stuff. And
yeah,
so that
you're
for
gonna be
that one to have really low standards for fight scenes, but what actually kept me watching it was actually how they did the story because it was different. And I was like,
right. And
oh, okay, this is different.
I think that was their shot at it, and it kept you in because this was
Hmm.
something different, and it kept me wondering. So for the hardcore superhero watchers, it kept us going. But for those who could take it or leave it, it turned them off and they ran
Hmm.
away. At least that's what I think. So they're going to have to be very careful about how they move forward with these movies, or they're going to start losing people. And their
Yeah,
budgets are super high right now,
yeah,
and they have the
insanely high.
potential to lose quite a bit of money. Well, they have to be to keep the CGI looking realistic. It's a large portion of the movies now are CGI when you have superhero effects and movement and digitization of people, and they're looking perfect and doing these wondrous things on a continuous basis in fantastic, exotic places. So you're going to
Hmm.
have that very expensive CGI and high level actors. I don't know why, but for some reason, if the person isn't famous and a superhero, they're not as interesting.
If it's somebody you don't know,
Right.
I don't believe so.
Yeah, they
I more
can't be a
enjoy it when they
superhero.
aren't known,
But it's funny how
personally.
human beings are irrational about that. Like,
Because I think we already have a standard towards them, but that's getting in a philosophical sense of how
well,
we
it's all
perceive people.
philosophical for superhero stuff because we all know this is all fiction. And that's
Right.
another thing. This is the equivalent of the male version of action um, movie stuff where the women have a Hallmark Lifetime channel and they can
Oh
watch that
yeah,
stuff.
this is definitely action movies
This
for us.
I think it seems to me like it's more oriented toward men watching the movie,
Hmm.
And okay, you have your audience. I'm sure women love it too, and for good reason. It's well acted, well written, and the special effects are cool. And they have strong female leads, which is cool, like Black Widow and some of the other ones.
Yeah, they tried that with Wonder Woman, and the first movie
Yeah,
was
Wonder
good.
Woman was a great movie.
The
Yeah.
first one was really good. The second one was got really DC for me. She started lassoing lightning bolts, and I was like,
Yeah, I never
okay,
saw it. Never
whoa,
saw it.
that was a
And
little much for me. I was like, okay,
a little
that
too
was
fantastic. And you're like, well, this is all fantastic in the first place, but you have to have
right.
that was your line of
I was
incredulity,
like,
right?
yeah, I just started cringing on the inside. I'm like, man, they're really going for
Yeah.
this one.
I mean, and here's all things about these movies. You must maintain internal consistency and logic. As soon as you start abandoning that, you're going to turn the most hardcore follower off. And you
Yeah.
do it too many times and you just lost. If you lose a hardcore follower, you've lost millions of others.
Well,
Left before him.
I'm excited with people realizing it's a formulaic and it's kind of getting stale and them kind of getting burned out on it. So the money pool is still there, but maybe there's more iterations. Because I'm a huge fan of, Universe X, which is a spin-off of the Avengers and how that all panned out, which was one of those graphic novels you bought me when I was a kid, and it was a
Mm-hmm.
big deal. It was very well produced and very well written out, and I love that series
Yeah,
because
that's
it's
what
a
I'm
lot grittier.
seeing.
And
Right.
I
That's
want more iterations of those same people, but in much grittier formats, and much
well, that's
much
going to
more realistic,
depend.
much more human stakes in mind.
Right. That's going to depend upon how the audience receives what's put out there. Like,
Yeah.
if they start losing money, it's a business. Bottom line, it's a business. If they can make money, they're going to keep doing it. If they start failing to make money, they're going to stop doing it and start doing
Hmm.
something else. You'll see more of these fantastic bank heist movies and old westerns pop up. They try all sorts of things to get people to go into the movies to make money, and
Hmm.
they hit the jackpot with the superhero thing because they started making more and more money as the years went by with superhero movies because they saw they made some, so they dumped more and more money into it. And with more money comes better production values, better actors,
It
better
was kind of
plot
a rough
lines.
start. I remember, Incredible Hulk not doing that well, even though I loved it. Ghost Rider didn't do that well, even though it was okay. Nicolas Cage.
The first one was okay. I'll give it
The
that. It
second one was
stayed
like a
fairly
B-rated
true.
movie.
Yeah, yeah.
It
And
got it got bad quick.
I don't know why they did that. Sometimes you just hit a foul ball and
Hmm.
you think it's good and everybody's telling you it's a foul ball.
Hmm.
I did hear that they were going to make another Ghost Rider with a different person,
It
but
could
I
be
don't
done
know
well.
who. Yeah, that's one of those characters that could be very, very well done. And they're going to have to bring him back for, I think, phase 5 of the Avengers. Of course, the latest one with the Eternals, it's not doing so well at the box office, but it's only not doing well compared to the other Marvel movies. It still made money, lots
Right.
of it.
Hmm.
It was
Yeah, it went
just
profit. It still went up.
it's just these
Green.
characters are so yes, it's just that these characters were so different than the other Marvel characters. They had a different feel, but they stayed pretty true to the original Eternal characters in the comics.
Yeah,
So
I have
you
no
had
idea
that
what these
weirdness.
people
You'd
are.
have to be a hardcore comic book fan back in the early 80s to know who these guys were.
Yeah.
And eh, it was okay. I thought it was worth seeing. It was worth doing. It wasn't a failure by any means. And I know they're going to weave those characters into the continuing plot to bring it all together. I've heard they're going to bring X-Men into with the Avengers and of course the Eternals, and you see they're already talking about Celestials and other things. So they're getting ready for a big
Mhm.
multi-universal event that's going to require everybody, everywhere, all the time to save not just humanity but all of existence everywhere. So the stakes got to get higher. The thing is, when they're done with that, the stakes can't get any higher. What are they going to do
Right.
next for a
That's
plot line?
it's the same problem with animes. You keep having this power creep and this power creep and this power creep.
Right. They're gonna have to start over from the bottom, and you're gonna see Daredevil again at the street level,
Right.
and and then you're gonna move up from there about him finding something that's potentially
Although that happens
life
in
changing.
comic books too. You have your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man starts fighting gods with Thor and
Right.
other people, and he's like he should never be in this field of play, but somehow he got here because just
Yeah. Well,
from him
Spider-Man's always
affiliating.
underestimated, but you're right. I mean, there's a world of difference between an enhanced human being and a god, or
Right.
somebody that's perceived as a god, or the
Even in his
Hulk
own,
who can hang
yeah.
with gods.
If he's allowed to get mad for long enough, he can
Hmm.
start doing some stuff. But even in his own comic series, he started having the one of the fates, a couple of gods he was dealing with. Although he never, squared up with them, but they were messing with him. They were bringing him into their own
Well,
worlds and
one of the
putting
reasons
them
why
in
people like
class.
Spider-Man is he's relatable, and even though he has superpowers, he's a classic hero type that gods
Hmm.
can use for their own ends, so they don't have to personally meddle with him. But Spider-Man will take up the banner and do stuff. He's
Hmm.
very versatile. He's weak enough to almost seem like he's in danger with trained regular people with high skills and gadgets and technology, but he's strong enough to hang with the big boys. So he's right in between. So he's like a perfect character type for almost anything.
Yeah.
And that's how they look at it. That's how they use him. And that's another reason he's relatable. I don't know how people relate to Batman other than they have dreams of vigilantism and they believe that they just had enough money they could right wrongs and teach people a lesson. And Superman, of course, he's such a good boy that you want to be like him. You're so powerful, you don't have to worry about anything. So you can
Hmm.
be a good person and help other people, and that's very attractive. That's what I think a lot of people want to do, and they forget to think like, yeah, but he can't be hurt, and he's as strong as he needs to be, and he can shoot lasers out of his eyes, and he can
Hmm.
cold out of his breath. It's easy to be a good guy when you have absolutely no fears and worries whatsoever. Although there happens to be this super rare element of kryptonite everywhere lately.
I love that in this series. Yeah.
Yeah,
The super rare thing that should never be here because it's galaxies away. Oh, we got tons of it. We had tons of that stuff.
yeah. So yeah, that strains credulity and wears on people when you see these things constantly. This super rare thing. Well, that's why it's a movie, people, because it's been documented and it's rare and it's exciting and people want to see it. And I know they get it, and you have to suspend disbelief to watch this. But after a while, people just can't suspend disbelief anymore, and the characters and the plot becomes boring, and you cease caring, and you're not going to watch them. And that's when everybody gets sick of them, they're not doing. But like you said, they did that to you with Wonder Woman, and I heard what you told me and other people told me about her, and how they're using her powers and her character in such a way to make it just a turn off, and you quickly lose interest because it has no internal consistency.
The thing is, and it's not because, and I know people are gonna jump on that. It's because you hate women or something, whatever they have. I
No, I
love, I love the concept of the movie. They had the '80s movie. They went retro with it. I loved how they went about
yeah,
her
and the first
villains.
Wonder Woman movie was fantastic.
Hmm.
They did a
I
great job.
and I've always liked Wonder Woman, even though she's been hokey. She has an invisible jet for no reason, even though she can
Yeah,
fly. I
yeah,
think it
when
was
it came
weird.
out in the 50s,
Yeah, but she was a
people,
badass. She could fight really well. She could block bullets. She
yeah,
could do
she's
things.
one of the
She
best
had a lasso that could make people
fighters of the
go through.
whole troop.
Yeah,
You know,
tell the truth. She had a lot of utilities and assets that actually fit well into the DC
and she's a
world.
goddess herself,
Hmm.
Diana, Greek.
Yeah,
You know, so
yeah. I actually do like that character a lot. My actually favorite one, and I'm waiting for them to do another iteration on, is Spawn. That is one of my favorite.
they're doing it. So
Yeah,
I just
that's
tell
one
you,
of my favorite
I heard they
movies.
doing it. For DC, one of my favorite characters is Martian Manhunter. I did hear they were going to do a version of
He's
that.
okay.
Yeah, you have
Yeah,
to. He's a type, so
yeah.
you either dig him or you hate him.
Hmm.
So, but I enjoy the character. I like what they tried to do with the character. He's a little too passive, but he has to be because Superman is the main guy for DC. He's the first superhero
Hmm.
that knocked it out of the park for DC, so he's the guy. Um, Funny enough, Prince Namor is the first superhero character, period. Came out, I believe, in the late 20s or early 30s before anybody else. And he's a Marvel creation.
Hmm.
Marvel didn't exist then, but they were assumed and grew into other things. And you barely hear about him or see about him. And Aquaman is a direct ripoff of Prince Namor. They're
Hmm.
almost they're almost identical in powers,
I have
abilities.
always hated Aquaman. He has never been cool to me.
Yeah,
Even when they
yeah,
have a really cool looking guy play him,
like the
it's
last
always,
one with Jason
yeah,
Momoa, he did a
yeah,
great job. It
super
was
cool looking dude. And I'm like,
well
still lame.
conceptualized, yeah. And that I said Aquaman is a direct ripoff of Prince Namor.
Hmm.
Um, and Prince Namor is a mutant, so he's still buddies with the X-Men type.
Hmm.
Interestingly enough.
Yeah, the X-Men movies are definitely an interesting subject because they did really, really well, and in the last couple of movies didn't do that well. The Dark Phoenix and such did not
Right.
do that well.
And I'm interested to see why. I'm wondering if it's because people just stopped caring, or they violated something about it, or they couldn't maintain it.
I don't think they did it well. I just don't think they executed the story well. It was a lot for a lot of people because it got really big really quickly because the mutants used to be kind of the underdogs of the superhero class. They used to have to deal with, guns and such and have to worry about that. Now
Being
you're
hunted
dealing with
down, all that.
yeah, now you're dealing with a god, essentially. You're dealing with Dr. Manhattan. You're dealing with somebody who can just change anything
But
with a
Dr. Manhattan was a different. Now he's DC, and he was a
I
different
compare him
one.
to Dr. Manhattan, but I'm talking about the villain. I can't remember his name, but the Egyptian god who was
Oh,
stealing people's power.
Apocalypse.
Apocalypse. It's an easy name. I forgot it.
Right, right. Well, that was not that was the second to last X-Men movie, right?
Right.
I think
And that one
Dark
didn't do so
Phoenix
well.
was the last one.
Hmm.
Yeah, maybe they just overestimated what they thought people were ready for with believability and what the X-Men characters could do, or it simply was just a bad story that people weren't interested in. You lost that
Yeah.
personal flavor with like X-Men First Class, I think was their best one by far.
Hmm.
And it's been shown, comic books itself have proven this, when you lean on heavy character development and make them interesting and people want to know what happens to them next, that's when you get huge audiences. That's when
They
you get
learned that
more
with Logan, though.
participation.
That's what's confusing to me. They did that with Wolverine. They did a whole nother series with him. They have a
Right.
whole movie with him, and it was a
He's a
great movie.
likable character,
Yeah.
And funny thing, he was created as a parody, or something like nobody's gonna like this. We're gonna make him unlikable, then we're gonna kill him off later. Turns out everybody liked him,
Hmm.
and they had to keep him alive, and the people who created him hated it.
Which is
So
funny. Yeah,
you
I could
never
see that
know.
because he was because in the iterations of the comic books, he's just some stout, mouthy person that's always on a cigar and just ready
Bad
to stab
mood,
anybody no
right?
matter what.
Yeah,
Right.
always got a bad mood and attitude. Yeah, that's it, and that's why they did it that way, so people would dislike him, and they could actually have a death that people wouldn't give him flack for. Turns out it backfired on him, and they had to keep him alive. And they kept him alive by making his healing factor so high he couldn't die, and
Hmm.
and giving him adamantium, of course, uh, that kind of thing. But it's interesting, and that's what I'm saying. That the character alone was kept alive due to fans demanding more of it. I
Right.
believe he first showed up, and I had the comic. That's how I know, with Wolverine against the Hulk. He was the one who took a full power shot from an enraged Hulk and got up to fight some more, and everybody's like, I want to see more of this guy.
Hmm. I
So
think that's also a great showing of DC's mindset on their superheroes because it takes them a lot of feedback, of negative feedback for them to change their ways.
well, that's anybody, because honestly, you only hear from people most of the time when
Yeah,
they're
when they're
angry.
that's true too.
So if
But
you have a
but I
silent
remember,
majority, and people vote with money more than anything. If you're
yeah,
making money, and even though you have people yelling at you about how horrible this is, but you've made a pile of money, you're not really going to listen too much to
right.
that
Yeah,
loud minority
exactly.
of
Well,
people.
this success tells me otherwise, So
Correct.
they had this obvious, you know.
But
But to say that people have hated Robin forever in Batman series, and they voted
well,
to kill him multiple times,
no,
and they kept him
just
around.
once, and I only know that, and I'm not a giant Batman fan, like I've said, but a friend of mine was when he talked about. I remember when this happened in the mid to late '80s, and it was Jason Todd, who's now called the Red Hood, and they voted to kill him because people were just they wanted some gritty reality. That the '80s was a decade of gritty reality for comic books, and
Hmm.
Jason Todd was a prime example of that. And they voted to off him. Of course, now they have Red Hood, so they brought him back. Joker didn't really kill him, but for
Hmm.
all intents and purposes, at that time, for a couple of decades, he was dead and was killed, not just by a monster, but by one of the common villains for Batman. And it was also to show that is what Batman's doing proper? Shouldn't he just off him because he keeps coming back and killing his people? He killed one of his beloved boys that he's mentoring, and that was another
Mhm.
thing. Batman and Robin have caught a lot of flack for that about the gay undertones.
Right. The
That was even,
pedophilia a little bit.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they've caught a lot of flack for that. So, but they've never even hinted at it in the movies, and they've kept it as wholesome as can be for that kind of relation to show it's just a more of a father son or uncle
Mhm.
nephew relationship, and he's training. And Batman always picks these poor downtrodden boys that need guidance and assistance, and they're already athletic or they have certain kind of grit and will to them to want to see.
Yeah.
Uh,
I'm sure it reminds him of him when he was a child. Blah
Correct.
blah
That's the
blah.
idea. That is the
Yeah.
idea, and that is truly what the comic book is trying to do. It's only the people that have their own problems projecting their nonsense onto Batman and Robin that see that or have experienced it in the past and they see it something
Mhm.
similar again, so they project their own stuff on there. But that's not really what it's all about.
Mhm.
So I'd be curious to see where DC goes with this. I think that they could do a very good job. I don't believe that they have screwed the pooch yet, because the last DC movie where they just saw a peak of Dark Side with the last one was
Mm.
there. They did stub their toe pretty badly with Green Lantern just because it
Mm.
was hokey, and Marvel has done such a better job. I don't think they need to adopt Marvel's tone. They need to just stay DC. They just need to get
I think
better at
that's
what
what
they're
they're
doing.
trying, but DC's so hokey. I don't think it expresses well in a cinema format.
It can, it can, because you see these.
It'd have to be a lot of tongue in cheek the whole time
No,
to
I don't think so.
reinforce
Look what
that.
they did with Superman. It was well received, well done, and he
But
is,
that was a completely different iteration. Personally, I think they
yes. But what I
personified him
mean
in a
is
completely different light.
they can keep that feel.
Hmm
They can
I
keep that
I don't think they
theme.
kept that feel. Henry
No, they
Cavill
didn't.
was way grittier,
Yes,
way more
but they
realistic
got too dark. They took that and went even darker, and
with
that's what.
Batman as well. That's what did well. The grittier
But
ones.
that's Batman. That's the character. He's a gritty character. He's a street guy. He doesn't have any powers. He's got a pile of money and he's crazy,
Hmm
you know. So that's what made that character. The problem is they put everybody. They took all the other Justice League type characters and brought them into the Batman world, and that's not appropriate. These are super powered guys. They don't need to be like Batman. Batman has to be gritty and hardcore because if he makes a mistake, he dies. He's just a regular dude in a suit.
Right.
They have superpowers and they're durable. He is not,
hmm
except his mind makes him that way because he
Right.
doesn't
He's
allow
prudent because
mistakes.
he'll die
He's
otherwise.
grim. Yes,
Yeah.
he's grim and he's meticulous and he thinks everything through from every possible angle because he has to.
hmm
The other heroes, superheroes don't have to. So don't make them like him. Don't make
hmm
them super serious. People don't want to see that in those characters, and it makes it for a movie that's just tiresome and boring. Although even though you have existence on Earth being wiped out by Darkseid and his people, as you do in every superhero movie at some point, there's a proper way to handle it and an improper way to keep the audience entertained, and that's really the bottom line. At least I think so.
I get back to what you're saying. I back it up. I do think, yeah, the Ryan Reynolds with Green Lantern was a poor choice, even though I love Ryan Reynolds. He
Yeah,
is not the character for that. He's a more of a comic, jokey type, and Green Lantern's never been that guy. He's never been mouthy. He's been more serious
oh, the
to
Hal
me.
Jordan Green Lantern guy. Yeah, he's been fairly straight up guy.
Hmm
Just an
He's never been
average
a
guy with a
Spider-Man type of
ring.
guy.
Yeah,
Hmm
average guy with a ring
Or Deadpool, as Ryan Reynolds is now.
and super strong will. That's why he was chosen. That's the whole point. So you're right. Of course, he was an airline pilot, so he's going to have some seriousness to him. He was a military pilot. I'm talking about his character. So that Hal Jordan character is going to have some seriousness to it, but not to the degree that they require. But of course, he hasn't shown up in Justice League yet. Just that one standalone movie,
Right, true.
and we'll see if they introduce him later. If they do a two with Darkseid coming personally, and they have to have a Green Lantern help out, and then Hal Jordan's there. I don't know. We're just guessing here.
Yeah. Personal problems with him is I've always loved Green Lantern's idea, and I've hated how they execute him every time
Yeah,
because
it's
he's
disappointing.
always underwhelming. It's always
Disappointing.
underwhelming. Yeah.
The idea is if he can do anything with his imagination because of super technology and his will, why doesn't he? Why does he do lame things
Yeah. I'm gonna
like
make a big
baseball?
fist and hit
Yeah,
them with it.
like
Oh,
like ba-
brilliant.
like baseball gloves and shovels.
Yeah.
Like what? Really? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That don't get it.
And that's to me is why I love Spawn is because he essentially has the same
Hmm.
powers, but they're a lot more creative with the way he executes.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, they go ahead and let imagination run wild, and they could do the same thing with Green Lantern.
Hmm.
Perhaps there'll be some infinitesimal joy that somebody will hear us and do that for the Green Lantern and reinvent that character
Yeah.
again. That would be very nice, and that would make him the cosmic heavy hitter he really is if they
I'm
did
sure
that.
these aren't original feedbacks they've heard
Oh,
before.
I'm sure. I'm sure we aren't the first ones to think of this.
Mhm.
Do you happen to know what the next superhero movie is? Like, I know Moon Knight's coming out with a series on Disney Plus to prepare him for Marvel Phase 5. He's the beginning of Phase 4. So he'll be in the movies at some point, probably.
Actually, don't. The latest ones I caught up with were the new Venom movie with Carnage, and I wanted to see that. I haven't seen it yet.
You
But
haven't seen
besides
it?
that,
I haven't either. Woody Harrelson is Carnage in this one, and he's a great actor. And if they stick to the original comic storyline of Spider-Man in the mid '80s when that happened, I read
I'm
it, all the
already,
comic books.
I already know they're not going to because I saw the first movie. It was nothing like Venom is.
No,
Is, but it
nothing.
was enjoyable.
Yeah, they took the idea that he was an alien that came down, and then they went in a totally different direction, and that's
Hmm.
okay.
Hmm.
But they did with Carnage. It seems like they did kept to the idea that it was a piece of Venom, like
Here, I'll look
that
up.
Venom is his father, and Carnage is the son of Venom, and he merged with a serial killer, and it made him crazy. These things are symbiotes that take up for and think like whatever their host does, so they merge together and they create their own host,
Oh,
and
next
that's that
one
is
is Black Adam.
Black Adam. They've been touting that for a while, so long that I forgot about it. That's
Hmm.
DC, so that's the
Hmm.
next one that's coming out. When is it due?
July 29th, 2022.
So we have like a 4 month wait, 5 month wait before that.
Yeah.
No other superhero. Well, like I said, Moon Knight's coming out, I think, in a series, but movies it's going to be Black Adam. No other superhero movies coming out.
I
Marvel
do
or DC.
know Morbius is
More.
coming out. Oh, that's coming out May April 1st. So,
You mean
I,
Morpheus?
uh,
Or they say
no,
Morbius?
they're saying Morbius, but the vampire
Yes.
essentially.
Okay, they call him. Okay. Yeah, Morpheus was a different character, even in Marvel, not Lawrence Fishburne in the Matrix.
Well,
But so
technically, okay. So here we go. So I'm getting the actual footage because I had to click on it to see. So Batman's the next one coming out March 4th. The Batman movie's coming out.
okay, the next reinvention of Batman. We're gonna start
Robert
all over again.
Pattinson. Yeah,
Okay, and that's March 4th,
March
2022.
4th. Yeah,
So less than a month away. And then Morbius
and
with
then Doctor
Vampire.
Strange.
And now Morbius was introduced with Spider-Man. That was not a standalone character. He was a
Yeah,
introduction with Spider-Man. And
I
I
remember
won't
him
ruin
being
it
a
for people.
bad guy, just only a
He
bad
was
guy.
he was a bad guy, but he ended up turning out to be a good guy later. He was
Anti-hero
just
or good guy?
uh, all of it.
Okay,
He's moved through the whole thing. He started out
gotcha.
because he was made crazy by his mutation that occurred to
Hmm.
him, and then he moved through the entire thing of villain, super villain to anti-hero to hero.
I hope
So
they bring in
I don't
Blade
I don't know. I'm sure they will.
because to
Blade's
fight
a
him.
big yeah,
I love
Blade's a
Blade.
big Marvel character. I'd be surprised if they don't do that. That's almost a gimme. I
Yeah, it
can't see
really
them not
is.
doing that. And he's a good character. That was a great idea. So,
He's to me as an anti-hero because he just whoever's in the way of me killing vampires is getting got. I don't care.
yeah, and he was made to be that way. Again, it was the
Mhm.
80s. The 80s was all about anti-heroes. They started dumping them on everybody then, and uh, they were made famous, or they went away, or they were offed. So Blade made it through. So he's definitely going to be around, and a lot of people like him. He's a good character, great
Mhm.
concept. So you'll have that one, Morbius, and after that is what?
Oof, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of
Yeah, that's going to be a
Madness.
great one.
I
That's going to be
I
a
love Doctor Strange, so that should be fun.
hmm When
So
is that coming out?
that is May 6th.
May 6th. Okay, so we have quite a few before Black Adam comes
And the
out.
thing is, we're biased here because we love superheroes.
Correct.
So,
I grew up reading them, and I'm seeing them come to life here in a fashion that doesn't seem hokey,
mhm,
that seems believable with internal consistency, and I see the plot lines and stories and characters of that come to life on the movie. So yeah, I'm all about it. If you're not all about it, I understand, because after a while you just cease caring because they don't have proper character development. And that's not on you. That's on the people making the movie, because that's what made people want to follow comics back in the day. They developed the characters and fleshed them out to be human beings and
right.
not just ink drawings and silliness. They made them have a full spectrum of human feelings, emotions, and thoughts, and friends, and everything else.
I say I'm excited for these, but I can actually say I'm not going to watch any of these in the theaters. I'll just wait.
Oh yeah, well, we still have the bug going around, so sitting for two, and that's the other thing. The length of these movies have gotten pretty large, well over 2 hours in many instances.
Which I'm
And
okay with,
yeah,
actually.
as long because they're action filled, they really are.
Yeah, it
And
takes time to make a story like that too.
hmm but I'm not going to sit in a theater for 2.5, 3 hours with people, with
Yeah.
somebody who may be thick breathing the same air.
I'm not
So
even worried about that part. I just
not
genuinely,
right
even if
now.
that wasn't going around, I would just be like, meh, I'll wait
Yeah.
till it comes
Yeah.
out.
And it's going to be 6 months or so when it's available to download, and
Right.
watch on Roku or Netflix, or stream from somewhere. You're going to be able to see it. Although the prices on them have skyrocketed since everybody's staying home. Used to be you'd rent the movie for $7.99. I just saw the latest Matrix Resurrections, $25.99 for a rental.
Boy,
I was like, yeah, that's not going to happen.
that's more. I mean, I suppose they're trying to be like, well,
Uh,
if you brought three people with you to the theaters, that'd be about that.
Well, for now in the evenings on the Gulf Coast, it's $12.99. So if you have a couple, that's about what you're going to pay, $25.99 for two people. So I know they're trying to recapture that revenue, but they don't
Mhm.
have the middleman of the movie theater to pay.
Right. Yeah, you're
They're
just streaming this. Yeah, you have
yes,
this on some server somewhere.
right.
There's no
You're
real
you're not
overhead besides
you're
that.
not delivering film to anybody. You're not having all these other expenses associated with it. You're just having it in a server that's being downloaded.
That I'm already paying a subscription for to be have
Correct.
access to this,
Correct.
which is very interesting.
Yeah. And I don't see it going down unless people simply just scoff at it and go, $26? I don't think so.
Mhm.
And simply stop doing it.
Yeah, I think the only one I'm actually gonna maybe see in theaters is The Flash coming out November 4th. So that's quite a while. I like The Flash. I
You
hope
like
they do
the
well.
you like the new version of the Flash,
Yeah.
not the CW version?
CW version, he's a little too wholesome for me. He's a little too I'm gonna do the right thing. Although
Well,
this guy
the
seems to be
Flash
pretty.
character was always that way. So I'm
Yeah,
okay
this
with
one's a
that.
little bit more mouthy, and I think that's how I perceive the Flash is mouthy because he gets to
Mhm.
say things really fast and
Mhm.
mess with people while he's being a little bit of a gnat or a mosquito
Mhm.
until he finally gets serious with them.
Right. He's truly an OP character, even more
Mhm.
so than Superman and Martian Manhunter, to tell you the truth. If he's properly used the way that they've presented and developed the character over the
Oh yeah,
decades.
he's got insane powers now. He
If
used to not be that crazy, but I think the power creep is just
they
inevitable with him.
correct, they just have to introduce a new conflict, and in order for him to overcome the conflict, they have to develop his power and even more. So there you are.
Hmm.
Same with the other characters. So that's it. So
Yeah,
what do you want to talk about on the next podcast? You don't remember.
I don't remember.
All right, we're gonna get into current events. Lately just came out for our next podcast. We're gonna talk about the Russian and Chinese pact against America and the West that they created. Just came out today. Saw it on the New York Times, and they have had a long-term agreement that is just amazing to me as a Boomer X. that brings back memories of the Cold War, which I grew up under, and they are simply displaying open hostility to the West. And they're saying as much. And we'll talk about that in our next podcast. That's something we need to decide and discuss. And also, I want to get your impression as somebody who didn't have to grow up during that period. You were born after the wall came down, well after Tiananmen Square. You came up during a time when we started opening up trade with China, and they were buying our property and buying our debt, and we were started getting goods from them, and now it's blown up. Half of Walmart is Chinese, and most of electronics we're using now are Chinese in origin. We just don't know it.
Hmm.
Even the ones who claim not to be. Oh, it's sold in America. It's sold in America, but it's created and assembled in China somewhere.
Or at least
It
the
also,
circuits are
right, right.
some type of
Uh,
aspect of it.
Without them, it wouldn't exist. So even Korea, they're making their electronics, but they're getting a lot of components from China, which is right next door to them. So there's that. In Russia, uh, them being best of buddies, and we'll talk about that article about how bad is it really? Is this just posturing? But China is wanting to claim more islands in the South Seas, China South Seas. They and Taiwan, Russia wants to capture the Ukraine, and they're looking to lean on each other and stop what they call the Western version of democracy. They claim to have their own version of democracy, which is far more authoritarian. And they say, look, there's not only one way to do democracy. I don't see how China is democratic at all, to be honest with you. But that's me saying it
Well,
here.
they're at least making some type of democratic efforts with pairing up with Russia. You got to give them that.
That's not democratic. That's an alliance. That's simply diplomacy. I'm talking
True.
about the government over their people, and we'll do a little bit of research and discuss how we're hitting it and what we perceive about it. I'm sure I see it far differently than you do and what you think about it, and that'll be our next podcast. So thank you for listening and watching. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you soon.
Peace.